Hello, and bienvenidos to this episode of Voces, the official Hola at IBM podcast that brings our Hispanic and Latino communities of IBM together to share authentic, accessible, and informal conversations, amplifying critical leadership messages on culture, career, well-being, business, and technology. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of IBM.
Welcome to another episode of Voces. My name is Christian Zani, and I'm an executive search lead supporting IBM's consulting practice. This is actually the second Voces episode I've had the opportunity to host, and I'm super excited to present our next guest, Luis Benavides. Luis is a relatively newer partner to IBM, having joined almost a year ago. He is leading IBM's consulting federal practice in the areas of cloud migration, application, modernization, and development. Welcome to Voces, Luis.
Hey, Christian. Thanks so much for having me. This has been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time.
Awesome. Likewise, I've actually been looking forward to this conversation as well. Luis, I guess we could definitely start with your background. Would love to learn a little bit more about, just about yourself. Where do you come from? What do you do?
Yeah. So, this will probably be a little bit long, but we'll use this to feel free to ask any questions along the way. But ultimately, I was born and raised in the D.C. area. So my family immigrated from Peru, and my dad came around 1964. My mom and sister at the time came about a year later. And fast forward, my brother was born here in D.C., Georgetown Hospital. So locally, I live around the D.C. area. I live in Arlington. And I was almost born in what was Arlington Hospital at the time. I was actually a premature baby, extreme preemie. So they flew me they took me immediately to Fairfax and born in the area. But I was born and raised in this area, had a lot of family that immigrated here to this kind of Northern Virginia area. And being, first generation immigrants, especially in those days, we all lived like same apartment building, block, a lot of lifelong friends. I grew up, tios and tias. Some of them were family, some of them were blood, some of them not, but very much extended family. And that's been a big part of my influence.
Excellent. No, it's a great answer. And I can relate some. I'm also, I was born overseas, but similar concept. I mean, growing up with a familia and extended familia. So that's awesome. And one of the things that I love about podcasts, and really just, because it gives us the opportunity to showcase leaders like yourself, is really the story that, we've either all lived and, the story that we have to tell. And so with that in mind, what experiences, especially from your upbringing, have shaped you along the way?
Yeah. I've actually probably discovered this more now at IBM. But I noticed years ago, as I started becoming more active as a leader with my community, right? Been an executive for a while at a variety of different roles. Some of the big four companies, last 8 years. Had my own company that I started for about 5 years, which sold to one of the big four. And then it was with one of the cloud providers in the public sector market at the time, in early days of that. So as I started progressing along that particular path, my natural empathy really helped me, especially when I had my own company. A big part of my job was just people, right? And listening, resolving things, huge, right? Being part of the identity of the company and being able to bring folks in and nurture that environment and talent. So I noticed those kind of abilities. And then as I started getting together with other executives at similar levels for that Hispanic, Latino community, I started noticing we had more education on, we behave certain ways because of these cultural influences that I always thought were just me. So as I learned those strengths like empathy, I learned how to be a more effective leader. And now as I really get to spend much more time on that here as one of the leaders for our Hispanic organization for leadership advancement for our consulting business here at IBM, that's really allowing me to better focus on those strengths, refine it, and educating people on also, what are those weaknesses? What are the things you need to do to operate in an environment that's different, working with others that are different, that don't have your same culture and backgrounds and then influences, right, that shape kind of who you are and how you behave and act. So yeah, that's been significant on how I grew up, understanding how that's very shared amongst many others, and how we all are influenced by that, but have to work in a different environment of those that weren't.
Yeah, that's a great. Those are some great examples, and I love that you touch on, obviously culture, heritage, and how that integrates and intertwines with empathy, because it is. I think those are things that we learned, initially through our families. The care from our parents or our brothers and sisters, whether they're older and younger, and I would love to kind of double click on that a little bit, just from the from the point of being a leader, and not so much just a leader, but a leader who's Hispano, right? Who's Hispanic, that has that sort of different perspective. And how is that, how is like your heritage, especially Peruvian culture, how is that sort of intertwined or sort of guided you into the leader that you are today?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was uncomfortable to see myself as a leader, even starting my own company, right? I even back then I was like, well, I have a role to play. I'm a team member. I just happen to be in, a different position. And even earlier than that, as far as a career, you have to learn how to be decisive. You have so much information. They're looking to you to make the decision. You have to be comfortable making a fist and going, right? So, that's unnatural because we are typically very humble people. Actually, we are very hierarchical. How do you say that? Hierarchical. Hierarchy.
Yeah, don't ask me.
Yeah.
Hierarchical.
We respect hierarchy and authority, and we kind of take a different position when it comes to that. So that's unnatural. It's again part of a shared culture as I came to learning how to deal with that. So I try to teach others that too, and I try to help them understand how to assert themselves, how to understand be comfortable to go get feedback and help me, because I need to know the things that I'm not doing right, that I don't know. When I'm not in the room, what do they say about me? I need to overcome those things. That's a big part of what I've come to learn, what I try to help others understand of themselves and challenging them. So, that was a big part of understanding how my culture influenced my behaviors, how I need to be able to operate again in this kind of an environment. So significant influence. To answer on the Peruvian piece, or I'll let you respond, and I'll answer a little more on the Peruvian side.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, it fascinates me because especially even within the Latino culture. So, being born in Argentina, it's like my upbringing was much different. To your point, it's like it's different in that sense. But then, my brother-in-law is actually from Peru, and so I'm always curious to see sort of those different dynamics and how that even plays out. My wife is from Mexico, so all of those sort of nuances within just the culture. There is an underlying sort of consistent thing that you said earlier, but it's like at the same time each person has a different upbringing or nuance about where they're coming from.
Yeah, I would say I identify as Peruvian more than I do as having been born in the United States, and I don't really have an accent. I probably have grew up in around D.C. I have a more regional accent. And yo hablo español también, pero también igual con acento. So, and English first language, right? Naturally born and raised, but I still identify as Peruvian. Both of my parents are from Peru. My dad's from Arequipa. My mom's from Callao. My dad and his family moved to Callao. He was actually, he moved them, was very instrumental in his entire family moving there. At the age of 15, he always told me he was doing business, growing up in a small village in the basically mountain village in South Peru, going to the main city with cattle and selling things in the market, doing business as a, much more grown adult, right. And getting that respect, those values, those history, very, very important to me. What he did to move his entire family of 7 siblings to the capital, coming to the United States very early as one of the pioneers of our large extended family, numbering well over 100, right, kind of friends and family in the area, right?
Wow, that's crazy.
Like that is something I have a lot of pride in. I take a lot of pride in being Peruvian, and I love to cook, which was also something, my mom, right, as a Peruvian and from Callao. So I really identify much more as Peruvian versus distant from that, and and it's hard for me also to see, someone like, say, even my younger cousins, even my son, doesn't speak much English, doesn't speak much Spanish, and I feel definitely language is a big part of our identity. The influence of culture, they're all growing up differently than what we did. So I just try to make sure I can influence those things back and share as much as I can from those experiences, even though I can only recreate so much of that.
Yeah, and this is just kind of more curious than anything else. How's your ceviche? Is it top?
Well, I'll say Peruvian ceviche, absolutely. And our pisco sours, right? Number one. Yeah. And another plug would be Maido and Central, number 1 and number 6. I think we got ranked best restaurants in the world. So
nice. Yeah.
My best, actually, I make some Peruvian chicken, rotisserie chicken on the grill. I bought a rotisserie just for that. Sidebar, I'm actually a business partner or investor, I guess you could say, in a restaurant business. That's actually, I think, be a Peruvian chicken one. Is our first one that's going to open up.
Oh, so, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. So my best dish, I really think my lomo saltado is excellent. And that was nailed it kind of on the first try, which was great.
Nice.
So.
Now my mouth is watering. That's awesome. Yeah. So if I'm in the DC area, I'm gonna have to hit you up and check that out, because that's awesome. But I wanted to just kind of bring this back to Familia. I know in your recent blog post, which by the way, phenomenal blog that you wrote that's available on LinkedIn, you did mention that concept of familia, and you did kind of touch on this, with your dad and your mom as well. How has this sense of familia, impacted really just now your professional relationships in the consulting world, either with your clients or the teams that you currently have, or the teams that you're managing?
Yeah, I understand my strengths, and I'm very top of mind applying it. So what I mean, I've noticed sometimes I'll, if I have an employee having a difficult issue. I recall this one of the guys that worked for me. His dad was in the hospital kind of unexpectedly, very, very bad. It was a bad situation that kind of sent him there, kind of a trouble situation. So I went to the hospital, right? Local. I'm going to go. I've worked with this guy before, brought him in, just being there for someone. It's not that much out of my way to go do that and take the extra time out. And, that's super memorable. And I know that. But I know that those are the kind of things that I think of, and I know what it means to the other person by just taking the moment out. And I do that as much as I can. Now, granted, it's not always that in type of a scenario or even late at night or whatever. But I think of another one too that's actually pretty simple. I'll get to that in a second. Another one recently, just helping someone and coaching them. They're not, they're sure, yes, they report to me, but just coaching them on what do they need to go do to even just go get that feedback, as I mentioned earlier. Like, you need to know, and you need to be comfortable in receiving it. And you need to just listen, right? Don't get emotional, take the logic out, get past the emotions and listen to what they're saying and find that meaning of what you need to go address, but you need to go get it. And you need to ask them to help. Please share it with me, no matter how. Most people won't be as confrontational, or when they're writing something bad about you, which you got to go fix. When you're not in the room, they'll say a lot more. When they're actually in front of you, they kind of have a sense of obligation. They'll be a lot softer with it too. But that's what I've asked a lot of people who are going through some difficult things at work, that I coach them and advise them they need to do that. But I'm trying to teach them that empathetic behavior to go in order as a way to go get that information out that they need. The other side, as far as it, I think it's also very, it's a selfless behavior. So, and I know as a leader, you need to demonstrate that, because you need to lead these people and they need to follow you, right? The example was a simple Christmas gift exchange, with team of 20. And one of the guys read the idea wrong, and basically it was like all these decent, nice gifts, and then this one joke gift, right? And I think the thing that I had was like something that I got from someone was like, sports teams, like hat and mittens, like something nice. Like people wanted it, right? We finished the gift exchange. And this one guy on the team, which is one of the younger ones, got stuck with this joke gift. Yeah. It's like, you could see like how down he was. And everyone else got something pretty decent. So I gave him what I got. So here, take this. I'll take this. Yeah. And he asked the guy next to him, because they told me later, he's like why would he do that? Like, well, because that's like his job is to take care, right? So like I haven't kept in touch with that person, but it goes back to like those kind of little gestures. Those go a long way, and it's your responsibility as a leader to go do this. It's the sense of obligation. It's the obligation as far as recognizing yourself as a Latino leader, and its representation is your obligation. And we have a duty, or at least that's the sense that I feel.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome, and I mean, you're owning it, which I think that's the big part. And in that, I don't know. I mean, I've met leaders who a lot of times they can get so into this, sort of, higher level, and don't feel that obligation to their team, or they're just, not leading by example. And I think that's also sometimes a big challenge. And you kind of touched on this too, sort of the impact of what it means to be, a mentor, or a coach to some people. And I'm just curious, through your role, even today and even before, even when you had your own company, how have you done that? What does that sort of look like for you in terms of how do you pay it forward by, being a mentor or having those mentees, and how do you get that out of someone who maybe be afraid to raise their hand and say, hey, I need a mentor, I need a coach?
Yeah. So first, probably the reason I'm more passionate about it, and I respect everyone has, everyone can't put time into things, right? Although one boss always told me, and he was the president of this one company I was interviewing for, I was like, yeah, he coaches Little League, he does this and all this other stuff. I was like, how do you find the time for that? Like, I don't even know how I find the time coming in at lower level, let alone he's the president. His answer was, you make time for the things that are important. I was like blown away by that. I was like, I wasn't used to that. Right. And, and that's where I think I try to make sure, sorry, I forgot the question.
No, it's just more around, how has sort of being that mentor and coach to, or having mentees, or just getting even those individuals to kind of raise their hand and recognize, hey, I need a coach or a mentor.
Yep. So it's, I know where I was going with this. So basically it's because it's important, right? It's because it's the right thing to do. For me, I had very strong mentors, right? And one of them told me, look, as a mentor, it's when we see people with potential, we want to mentor them. Right. And that's my way of giving back to those that helped me advance, helped me get better, challenged me, made me do things. So I take all of those collective lessons learned, and I try to reciprocate that, with others that I find potential in. I met with this one employee, and he thanked me for taking the time out because he was going through something difficult. And, and I told him, look, I wouldn't have taken the time if I didn't care, if I didn't think you were, could perform and do it. If I didn't believe in you, I probably wouldn't have put my time into it. And I was being transparent. That's the other thing is definitely that I learned is the transparency. And I really try to be transparent in a lot of things that I do. If it's, an opportunity we're pursuing, I try to give my thoughts. I'm open to feedback and everything else. But on the transparency with people, I think that's the one thing we need in order to get better or know what we're not seeing is I need someone to be transparent. And again, it goes back to, if they care, they'll take the time out, they'll do those things. So I try to show them that, and I try to get them to go ask those things of others. But in turn, it's ultimately also about leadership at all these various levels. And I expect them to go do the same when it's their turn to go work with someone else as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, mentors, coaches, I mean, they're all going to play a substantial part into one's career development. And I know you've been active. We have talked before, but I know you're active from a recruiting perspective, kind of being in that recruiting champion, especially within the Hispanic community within IBM. How do you sort of perceive or sort of envision where mentorship and coaching could be leveraged as really a way of either attracting or retaining Hispanic employees in an organization?
So maybe it's a little bias, and I talk about bias and I'm biased too sometimes, but Latinos in particular, we have natural empathy, we have natural transparency, and we're also willing to be vulnerable. And I think those are like three basically, as I would define as, leadership qualities, right? So I think we make natural leaders. We're social, as in like we're typically social, even though I kind of think of myself as an introvert sometimes. But that means we're good people. And that's the kind of thing you need to be as a leader, which means you can kind of lead any different type of team that's not even your community. So my belief is Latinos make really good leaders. Now, again, we have to break through and learn how to operate as an executive, as a higher level executives in a world that doesn't look like us. We have to know what their perspective, and again, these are natural qualities we have as far as the empathy side to relate and see things from the other side. What is their perspective? How do they behave? How do they expect you to behave? How do they expect you to operate and perform? I'm a word person. I'm not a numbers person, but I have to operate in a numbers world. So, and I'm held to performance in a numbers world. So I just kind of try to teach those things. But ultimately, I think from leaders, I feel pretty strongly that people of that kind of a diverse background of this community make good leaders, good people leaders, and and I would like more of them to join this company. I also recognize that this place is maybe the largest, but definitely the most active, regardless of the numbers that I've experienced at any place in my career. And I know, being an outsider, I didn't know any of this. So, I talk a lot, and we've talked a lot. Let's not keep this a secret. So that's kind of what I'm doing is, let's not keep it a secret. Let's get it out there, and let's use this strength and bring in more that are, that can operate in this world as leaders.
Yeah, that's a good point. And kind of in that same vein, I mean, I'm curious, like when you sort of now you're coming up on a year, with IBM, are there areas that you're just like, what, these are the gaps, these are the things I would love to see change, or, these are the things that we can improve upon? Like, and if so, what would those be? If you just had to pick maybe one or two.
I think I think it goes back to like, let's not keep it a secret, right? I think there is an advantage. I'm accustomed to being in an environment where it's very competitive for talent, as in earlier days of cloud, big acquisitions, ramp up, scaling. You can't. It's so much not a monetary thing. I was always a big believer in culture. Like the company that I joined with, the president that I mentioned that had coach baseball, Little League. We went from 340 million when I got there. Fast forward, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, $1 billion.
Wow.
A big driver was culture. That company had a strong culture, very different from the places that I worked at, which is why that surprised me when he made that comment. And what happens with a strong culture is it's infectious. It's infectious with your clients. You want to do business with who you like. You want to be around the people that you like. Though that kind of culture brings in those people, and helps you work and be effective with clients. So culture is free. Doesn't cost anything. It costs time. It costs these kind of things that we do to go invest our time. So by not keeping it a secret, by raising the profile and visibility of individuals here that are really passionate, that's about expressing our culture, and it will attract people to come work at a place like this, to be with others that, they want to work with those people. You want to do business with those people, and they want to be a part of growing and raising that out there in the market. So those are the things I think we need to do better. And that means probably second to that, now grow it and do more of it. So I challenge the people that I talk to in the interviews that we've been doing for your executive recruiting is I expect them to be in this box on the screen, the next one after they get in.
Yeah. That's awesome. And let's, and I guess, finally, let's say, you're in a coffee shop, drinking either cortadito or café con leche, or in my case, un mate, or pisco sour. Depends on what kind of coffee shop. What advice would you give to 20-year-old Luis who's aspiring to be a leader or in a leadership role in the tech industry in one day?
You need to be comfortable in seeking mentors and spending the time with them and listen. Just shut up for a second and listen, right? Take your emotion out of it, learn how to take your emotion out of it. Don't jump up and respond. But people will invest their time and be grateful to do that as long as you're listening and you're acting on what they've advised you. The more people that I guess this is a bit two sides of this coin. The more people that don't look like you, because those are the types you're going to have to work with, and you have to learn how they see the world and their experiences, which is part of your natural empathy that you have. Find them, find a couple of them, right? But also, and I would say that's maybe from a mentor side. From a coaching side, you should really find someone that is doing what you do so that you can learn the skills and things of who you want to be. I want to be like that person, right? And if they look like you, that's even better, because now you're going to find relatability. As you're trying to work through things, they're going to have a similar perspective because they've probably been there before at some point too. And it's going to be easier to open up and relate because of that shared background. So I really think that's who you need to find. And if you invest the time into that, they'll invest the time into you, and you'll probably grow a lot better than trying to do this on your own. That was something I think I might have wrote about that, or we've talked about it, but basically, in the community that I grew up, my family, extended family community, I didn't have those people like that. I didn't have those people that did this kind of work that I could learn from, or frankly, maybe even not always at the executive levels, few. So I only had so much available to me as far as experiences that could be shared that I could learn from. That's why it was so invaluable to find others that are outside of my community. And I think, even I think about this on recruiting and the community overall, those that grow in poverty or first generation or whatever, that don't have those communities because they're not born into them. I think they need to be challenged to go outside of that, because I think those are elements of helping you develop faster versus maybe not. And then maybe you don't get the opportunities.
Yeah. And especially, and I've seen this even in my career. I mean, you and I think we're definitely cutting from the same fabric in many areas. I think, it is, it's sometimes it's very hard it's very uncomfortable to kind of go and step outside of sort of that family bounds and try to raise your hand and seek out that mentorship. And it is humbling. But then the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the more, you start to realize, okay, I can do this. Or like you said earlier, it's like feedback. I may not necessarily like what I'm hearing, but I need to hear it so I can become a better leader, so I can grow, and maybe not take it so personally, but then that's how I develop as a professional, or get those opportunities by raising my hand that someone may not necessarily raise their hand on. So all great advice, but yeah, those are great points.
Thanks. Yeah, it's like I said, it's very important, right? I feel that, it's part of my sense of duty and obligation to give back, to my parents, right? And I mentioned, when you replayed it, I noticed, I mentioned mostly my dad. Mm-hmm. My mom, she sacrificed a lot as well. It's, for my dad to move away and her being raising a 1-year-old, by herself, right? In that sense, that was a lot. And then as she moved here, or when she moved here, she worked in food service industry in Arlington Hospital at the time, for many, many years. And she left that to go raise me, basically, because I was the youngest of the three, kind of the last one. That's a lot of sacrifice to, hard labor. Many of our parents that are first generation, and again, natural service industry. So I'm in client service industry. I like being in client service industry. And again, it's a lot of these natural abilities. So a big reason why I want to grow things around this podcast is to talk to this community as Hispanics in technology consulting. We're in client services. We're in a higher value area of of industry, but it's part of our natural abilities and talents that serve this really well.
Yeah, keyword serve. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, listen, Luis, it's been such a great time and moment with you today, and honestly, just the fact that you've just sharing a bit more about your personal and professional journey, and really just the impact of what has come from just your upbringing, your parents, your culture, and really just the impact that it's had on your life and your career. And honestly, just really appreciative of your leadership and your words of wisdom for our Voices listeners. And really just again, thank you for the time today. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Christian. And I think the next one, I'll be on that side and I'll interview you. So I'd love to hear your story as well.
Love the idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Voices. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify channels. You can find us as Voices so you don't miss any new episodes.